Well, hello, and welcome to Things You Might Feel Guilty About Throwing Away, Part 2. The footage you are about to see was actually originally recorded as part of my previous video, and so if you haven't seen that one yet, I encourage you to watch it. You don't have to watch it now, you can watch it later. I'll link to it here, I'll link to it in the description, I'll link to it all the places. But basically, in that video, I talk about sort of my approach to this topic and give you some easier categories that you can use to practice throwing away or otherwise getting rid of things that you feel guilty about. In this video, we're going to be moving on to more of the heavy hitters, like the emotionally a little more draining categories. And so if you're jumping in here and you find like, oh, this feels like a little much, go ahead, watch the other video, start implementing those things first, and then come back. Moving on to things you wish you used, but you don't. I think the main reason you might feel guilty about throwing away things that you wished you used but you don't is exactly in the name of this category. You feel like you are letting yourself down if you get rid of this thing. So for example, a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more intentional about eating quote unquote healthier foods. And so I got this cookbook that was supposed to make it super easy. The cookbook says it's not a diet. I don't think it was a diet per se because I wasn't really limiting other things, but it definitely required me to buy a lot of ingredients that I don't normally have in my house. So there was a cost involved, right? So we have like some sunk cost fallacy going on there when I feel like, well, I've spent all this money and so I need to use it. Otherwise, I'm out the money. And I feel like, man, I bought all of these because I wanted to take better care of my body and I'm not doing it. So am I even taking good care of my body? So that has been the struggle. Thankfully, my husband and I have been really working on intuitive eating recently. And so that has given me mental permission to get rid of some of these foods that I'm not using and not to feel bad because I'm not making quote unquote healthy foods, but instead focusing on what my body needs. So, I am finally able to throw these things out without feeling super, super guilty about it. But for a long time, it hosed me up because I felt like I was letting myself down. And again, my old friend, wastefulness. I felt wasteful not using food that was in my cupboard. Here's how to assess where these feelings are coming from, what's driving them, and how to ask yourself questions that help you really get to the bottom of this. So first question is, what emotions come up for you when you look at this item or these items that you wish you used but you don't? And then once you've identified the emotions, think about what's the reason behind why you feel like you should use these things. Is it personal goals, societal expectations, pressure from other people, something else? I mean, these emotions and these reasons are important because they're telling you something that is really, really helpful. They're telling you how you feel about yourself, what you think you're lacking. And that's why this decision is a lot deeper than just figuring out whether or not you should throw something away. We are dealing with our own insecurities with these items, and so it is best to go gently. And so once you've figured out sort of these big picture things about how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way, it's time to ask yourself a few more questions. Am I comfortable enough in my own skin to make a call on this for myself? Or am I just letting other people's opinions influence me way too much? Have my thoughts or feelings about what this product is and what it represents changed at all since I bought it or brought it into my home? Maybe you didn't buy it. And then finally, am I tempted to hold on to this item because I have unrealistic expectations for myself and I am just reinforcing those? How to make it easier to throw away. Like I mentioned earlier, now that I am on this journey of trying to eat intuitively, my thoughts about what healthy food is and what it entails have shifted and actually grown a lot wider. And so I don't feel as guilty about throwing some of these food items away. And honestly, I feel like that is one of the keys to feeling less guilty about throwing items in this category away. You need to change your expectations. This is not always easy to do, but if you can in a healthy way that doesn't make you feel more ashamed or sad about, the progress that you're making, If you can expand your view of what you should be doing or even rewrite it completely, you're going to be in a much better place. Hopefully, it will make it easier for you to get rid of these items without feeling like a lot of shame or disappointment in yourself. And this is hard for a lot of us. And if it's hard for you, I also recommend doing everything you can to work on self-acceptance. Because maybe in an ideal world, that thing that you're holding on to because you wished you used it is something you would use often. But whatever the reason is that you're not using it and you're starting to suspect that you may need to throw it away, working on self-acceptance and just saying, okay, just because I'm not doing that specific thing or using that specific item does not mean that I'm a failure. There are a lot of valid reasons for not using something that you feel like you should be using or that society tells you should be using. Sometimes things are just not a good fit, and sometimes they're just not a good fit right now. And in both cases, it's okay to let go. Next up is things that you could repair but haven't. You probably feel guilty about these because you could still technically use them. This is another form of feeling like, oh man, like I'm wasteful because I haven't gotten the full use out of an item. And listen, I am all for using things up and I'm all for fixing things, repairing things, mending things, but sometimes we have things that we are holding on to because we intended to fix them and then we're not. And after a while, it becomes pretty clear that we're not going to fix them. If you like thrifting like I do, you may even have bought things in this condition and you may feel a little bit guilty that you never restored them the way that you intended to. So here's how to assess this situation. First of all, how easy is it to repair? I'm talking about the convenience of getting it repaired if you're going to hire someone or have someone else do it, but I'm also talking about the skills involved if you're going to do it yourself. So either way, like how easy is it for you to do it yourself? How easy is it for you to get it somewhere that it can be repaired? Second of all, how expensive is it to repair? This, again, could involve materials that you need to fix it yourself or hiring a professional to do it. Third, how valuable is this thing when repaired? So the question here is really not necessarily how much you could sell it for, but how much you or someone else might want it if it was in good working condition. And then finally, would you use it if it were repaired? So the flowchart on this one is pretty easy. If it is too much hassle to repair, too expensive, you won't use it, and you don't actually want it or care about it that much, then the best decision is probably going to be just throw it away. But if you would say that it's easy to repair, then I would recommend just going ahead and repairing it. But set a deadline, because a lot of times the issue is that we don't really feel like we have the time to repair something. And so if you don't have the time and you're not going to take the time, it may still be the best decision to throw it away. Second, if it's inexpensive or at least not too expensive to get repaired, you have to decide whether or not it is worth the cost, right? Like obviously, if you can't afford to get it repaired, then you need to either donate it or throw it away. But if you can afford it, you probably need to think about whether it is worth what it will cost, which brings us to the third question, which is how much do you really want it in your life? If you feel neutral, I would say get rid of it, either donate it or throw it away. But if it would make your life richer and or more convenient, or you would just enjoy having it, then I would move on to the final question, which is if you would use it. If you've made it and you've worked through this flowchart in order, it's probably a good idea to keep it guilt-free and just repair it instead of throwing it away. And if you do land at wanting to repair it, then I think it would be probably helpful in a lot of cases to investigate why, or if there's an emotional component or behind why you haven't repaired it yet. It may be that you're feeling overwhelmed and like you don't have time for it. It may be that little tasks like that annoy you. It may be that you've been telling yourself that you have to do it yourself when you could actually hire somebody or trade skills with someone else to do it. Because yeah, there's often a reason why you haven't gotten to a task that isn't just laziness. Like you're probably not being lazy about it. You probably have some reasons going on that you may not have realized. So if it seems like it's going to be difficult for you to repair it, I would investigate that emotionally. And again, set a time limit that feels doable, but not too stressful for you to get repaired. And then, of course, if you've decided to throw it away, here's how to make it easier to throw away. But I should say before we get to throwing it away that if this item is easy and or inexpensive to repair and it is actually useful or worth something to someone in its repaired state, it may still be worth donating it instead of throwing it away. Just mentally, for all of us, I feel like it's a lot easier to donate something instead of throwing it just in the trash bin. So if you're not sure where this falls on the spectrum or whether or not you should donate it or throw it away, something that I find very helpful is that I try to imagine that I am an employee in one of these donation centers. You may actually know some of the employees at your local thrift store, and if you do, try to picture that you are them, you're having a busy day at work, you get a box or bag or whatever with donation things, and you see this broken thing that obviously needs repair. Are you going to feel like putting it out on the floor, or are you just going to toss it in a dumpster? Obviously, like, I know different thrift stores have different policies for things like that depending on their mission, but like, if you feel like there's a chance that it might get thrown away, then, maybe you don't want to donate it. Maybe you just want to save that poor thrift store employee the effort and do it yourself instead of just taking it to the donation center for ultimately to be thrown away. And then honestly, if you decide that it's not worth donating and you do need to throw it away in order to get rid of it, I think that something that really helps is thinking about the use that you have already gotten out of it. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about this item because in theory, you could repair it or get it repaired and get even more use out of it. But sometimes you have gotten what you needed from an item and it's okay to throw it away. And like ultimately, you are probably going to have to grapple with a little bit of guilt over the fact that you knew it could be repaired, you held on to it in order to repair it, and then you didn't repair it and you threw it away. And honestly, I get it. There is a reason that I'm trying to mend more of my clothes now instead of just throwing them away when they get holes in them or whatever. But ultimately, you need to decide whether or not you feel strongly enough about this item to repair it. And if you don't, and you don't think other people will either, then you have done your due diligence and you can throw it away in peace. Moving on from there to things that are broken and irreparable, but still loved. Okay, so story time. Kind of sad story time, so pull up your tissues. But when I was in college, I saved up to buy myself a guitar. I spent close to $700 on this acoustic electric guitar, and I was really, really jazzed about it. I was learning to play a little bit, and I was just excited to have my own instrument. And like that $700 was the result of several years of saving. It was a lot of money to me then. It would honestly be a lot of money to me now. But I was a new guitar player. I did not know a lot about, strap locks, or I think that's what they're called anyway, but the things that lock your strap onto your guitar. I didn't know to buy those. I want to say like within the first 3 months of buying my guitar, I dropped my guitar. It was on, I had it strapped on and it just fell off the strap, fell on the floor, and it cracked. I was devastated. Now I took it someplace. I tried to get it repaired. That repair lasted for a little bit. But ultimately, I think the place where it was cracked is just very difficult to repair. I got to the point where like I couldn't even look at it without just feeling sick to my stomach. My dad did take it to another place to sort of get a second opinion on it. And they said, well, yeah, I mean, we could fix it, but honestly, you're probably going to be spending the same amount or more to repair it than you did on buying it in the first place. So you'd probably just be better off buying a new guitar, which of course I didn't really want to save up for again. I didn't really have the money. And I tell you all of that, and not because I want you to feel sorry for me, but because I want you to know that like, I know very acutely what it feels like to have possessions that are broken and cannot or practically cannot be repaired, but are still loved. And that's what we're going to be talking about here. I really think most of the guilt in this case is just coming from the fact that the thing is broken but is loved. Like, that is a very hard thing. Often that is our fault if we have something that we really, really care about, that we didn't protect it or we didn't take good care of it. And so there can be a lot of guilt attached to those items. And yet at the same time, there's a strong desire not to get rid of those items. So here's how I recommend assessing the decision. First of all, I just need to acknowledge that, like, the emotions with this one are even more intense than the other categories that we've talked about up to this point. So we need to proceed carefully, and we need to pay extra close attention to all of the emotions that come up. The guilt, of course, but also anything else. With this category, you have 3 options. The first one is to throw it away. The second is to reuse it or make it into something else. And the third is to give it away to someone who doesn't think that it's irreparable or who will reuse it in some way. I know I've been taking a very logical approach to a lot of these categories, and I honestly feel like that is the best thing to do in most cases. But for this one, because it is so emotional, I think we're going to tap into our emotions just a little bit more, and we'll also be weighing practicality in there as well. Okay, so the first question I want you to ask yourself is, how meaningful is this object to me? Specifically, you're trying to figure out if it is meaningful enough to you that you want to keep it even though it is no longer useful. And that is totally fine if you do want to do that. But if you're not sure or you don't really want to keep it, the next question I want you to ask yourself is, what are you most comfortable with? Are you most comfortable with giving it away, reusing it yourself, or throwing it away / laying it to rest? So let's start with the option that I think is the least emotionally taxing. Obviously, this is going to depend a little bit on the object and your relationship with the object, but generally speaking, I think that giving it away is going to be the least emotionally taxing option. I think the reason that this option might appeal to a lot of people is that it's often easier to part with beloved objects if we give them away. If we can imagine that thing finding a new purpose and a new life with someone else, then we don't have to be as sad about the fact that we no longer own it. The thing with this particular category, though, because the object is not repairable or is close to not repairable, it is going to be a lot harder for you to find someone that wants it, right? I mean, like, we can't just give all of our broken stuff away to people. It might be very meaningful to us, but if they don't have the emotional attachment to the object, they may not want it. And so while this is probably the easiest emotionally in terms of like parting with the object, it is probably the hardest, practically speaking, because you have to find somebody who actually wants the thing that you want to give away. And that can take a lot of time. So for example, with my guitar, even though I felt horrible when I looked at it, I held on to it for years because, I mean, I guess I was just hoping that it wasn't true on some level. And also I didn't really know what to do with it. Like, it felt like sort of a waste to throw away a whole guitar and a whole guitar case. And eventually I did find out that someone that I worked with repaired guitars. And then after he would repair the guitars, he would give them to teens who were in like community music programs. And so, and maybe couldn't afford to buy their own instruments. And so I believe that was what I ended up doing with that. It honestly could still be in my parents' basement if I never connected with him, because I don't remember, this was years ago. But that was my intention. That was my plan, was to give it away to him so that, you know, it wasn't very practical for me to repair it, but it was probably repairable and something that, you know, especially if he was willing to replace a lot of different parts of the guitar, he could do. You probably don't want to go the route that I went, where I just like sort of waited until I heard about something that worked for my particular situation. You probably actually want to be proactive in seeking those opportunities out, because otherwise you are just going to end up holding onto this object. Talk to people who work at local programs or charities related to your item to see if they have any uses for irreparable or hard to repair items. Maybe donate it to a local museum, post it for free on Facebook Marketplace, just let people know that it's damaged. Basically, just do whatever you have to do to get it out of your house and onto that new life that you imagine it having. And if you don't feel comfortable with doing those options, then probably either repurposing it yourself or throwing it away are your best options, which we're going to cover now. So next, let's move on to repurposing. This may not be true, but I feel like you can make almost any object into either wall art, something for your yard or garden, or like a container or box of some kind. And depending on what the object is that you're looking to repurpose, there may be a lot of ideas for it online. For example, I think I've seen like guitars converted into shelves. I wonder why I was interested in that. But the idea here is to honor the object's meaning to you by transforming it into something that you can still use and appreciate now. If you don't have the skills to make this item into something usable, you could also hire someone to do it if that is in your budget. I feel like it is probably middle of the road on both how easy it is and how emotionally taxing it is, right? Like we said, giving something away is emotionally very easy, but it can take a long time and may not be super practical. Making something into another object that you can use is maybe a little more emotionally taxing because, if you are broken up about this object and the fact that it is broken, dealing with it and turning it into something else could be an issue. At the same time, it also is going to take a little bit less effort than giving it away because you are the person coming up with the way that it's reused. You're the person to whom the object means something. And, eventually you may have something really cool that creates a great memory if you can take the time and the emotional energy to work through that. And then finally, throwing the object away is still an option. And I would say this is the most low effort option, but it is probably the hardest emotionally because you know that you are saying goodbye to that object forever. If it's very painful to look at the object in its broken state, throwing away is probably your best bet. But if it feels too calloused, you may want to consider one of the other ones we've talked about on this list. I'm not saying that you have to get rid of every single thing that is precious to you and broken, but honestly, this is often the most practical solution. So if you decided, okay, I do want to throw it away, I don't want to make it into something else, and I don't want to give it away, or, I haven't been able to find someplace to give it away, then I'm actually going to link to an entire video that I did on getting rid of sentimental items because I feel like that will help you the most. And yeah, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.